What's up, golf friends? This is Jim Colton, and this is the Driven Golf Podcast. We got the three-man weave is back, as this is super exciting for episode 32. And I had to say, like about a week or so ago, I came to you guys with one of my harebrained, super ambitious ideas, and it was like, how many college coaches do you think we could get on the pod in the next like 5 or 6 days? And this was sort of a reaction out of signing day. We really wanted to have a special episode that was dedicated to these 2025 kids that committed, and I think that everything that's been swirling around in junior golf and college golf with the roster limits and the settlement and who's in, who's out, that I think what was lost in all of this is the fact that these kids, these 2025 kids, have this tremendous achievement. They played a lot of great golf in a very, very stressful time, and they signed. And I think that was worthy of just recognition and reflection. And so we reached out to these coaches. We got a ton of response. Probably, I don't know, it's probably one of the most ambitious kind of golf podcast episodes around. We got 8 coaches in this one episode talking about the kids that they signed, like what stuck out. Do they remember the first time that they saw him? What did they recognize? When did they realize that this was a kid that they wanted? And I thought when you zoom out and you listen to these together, there's a lot of like good takeaways. I mean, A, it's celebrating these kids, but B, I think there's a lot of lessons learned. So hopefully people get that out of this episode. But like Joseph, like what was your takeaway listening to these episodes?
Yeah, I thought your idea was definitely harebrained at first when you came to us. I think we even used to have a segment for this on the pod. But
yeah, big idea.
But no, it was a really good idea, Jim, and I was glad to see it come to fruition. And I think I kept thinking about these kids and these coaches, and is probably a big kind of an exhale moment of all this work that they've done and leading up to it. It's finally official. Everyone knows where they're going. This is another great chapter in their lives, and just hearing the coaches kind of go through their process of how they track these kids, it kind of stuck out to me that no two situations were alike. But I did find a common theme that you'll see here is these golfers are athletic, and they are ready to take that next step in their career. So yeah, I think it's turned out really great, and I'm excited for the listeners to get to enjoy it.
Yeah, so Andrew, like you spoke with Coach Clinard at Auburn and Bill Alcorn at TCU, and also the other segments. Like, what was your takeaway from those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally with Joseph. Like, I came away with the same thing, thinking that you need to be 6'4" and hit it really, really far. Yeah, I mean, I think the performance history, when I was looking through the guys that I was going to talk about, all of them have peaks and valleys in their junior career, but they in general, their scoring average is good. They have a couple standout moments. The other thing that the coaches talk about is, whether they have a high ceiling or, their golf IQ is really, really high. And I think the interesting thing of hearing from these coaches is you get some insight into what they're thinking about when they're like looking at a recruit. Something also that's interesting is like they watched all of them play. Like it's important that you realize if you're a junior, you're going to be playing in front of these guys, and they're going to notice this stuff. So yeah, I thought it was great to get the insight from the coaches, and looking at all these players. I mean, yeah, it is really exciting to see like who's going to show up freshman year for these programs.
Yeah, you mentioned them watching. I think the interesting thing in my mind, there's a couple instances, if you listen, where the coach watched the kid play and he's like, well, he didn't really play that well that day. But it was some moment within that round, maybe just a couple swings or how he handled a certain situation or how he carried himself. In a lot of ways, there's sort of like these little things that made a coach decide like, okay, that kid has something that exactly what I'm looking for, or there's something there, and I want to keep tracking this guy to see if he continues to develop. And if that's true, then the opposite must also be true, where there are little things that are also making the coach to sort of dismiss or just cross that kid's name off of his list. So I think the importance of like how you carry yourself in a group, in a tournament, how they talk about fight and grit and how you deal with adversity. These things come up, these themes come up time and time again. And I think you'll see that in this episode. So anyways, yeah, I think it's really cool to zoom out and just see what are these things that stick out. We've got a full range of coaches. I think we have every time zone covered in the US in this episode. We got coaches at the, literally at the top of the rankings, national championship coaches, Hall of Fame coaches. And it's interesting. We have some kids that were recruited internationally, and that's something that was new information to me as well. And look, like, I'm hoping that this becomes an annual thing, because I think that we do need to celebrate these kids at signing day and just take this opportunity to celebrate that. B, like, I'm hoping that there's a part two. Like, I want to expand this as much as we can. So if there's coaches that are listening, or maybe you're a parent or a kid who got recruited in 2025, reach out to your coach and see if you'd be willing to come and talk to us, for 5 or 10 minutes about their recruiting philosophy and these kids as well. So maybe there's a part two, maybe there's a part three. Like, let's blow this thing out. I think this is probably the most important episode that we've done to date, and I think it's my favorite episode that we've done to date. Hopefully you guys feel that and feel the same way through this episode. Coach Gator Todd, men's coach, University of Kentucky. Welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining the celebration of the 2025, signees. We had a huge week last week. Yeah, you've got 3 signees. I call them the 3 C's. Maybe you call them the 3 C's. But you got Cole Stockard from Georgia, Charles Cawthon from South Carolina, and Cameron Phillips. It's my personal favorite because he's left-handed from Ohio. Yeah, I gave you a couple prompts just to talk about, how when you first saw these guys, what was the thing that stuck out, and we really want to celebrate these guys and their achievements leading into University of Kentucky next fall.
Sure, sounds great.
So first, you want to tell us about Cole?
Yeah, absolutely. I first saw Cole at I think first off, I had known about Cole for a while. Cole was actually hurt when I got the job at Kentucky. That was the kind of the summer where everybody in the 25 class was kind of getting recruited, kind of, I feel like a lot of kids were committing or whatever. Cole's a little bit late to the party there, I feel like, which was perfect for us because I was still recruiting the 24 class at the time, and so that was kind of my number one priority entering the summer, was trying to go find some 24s, which we did. So we kind of moved on the 25 class late, and Cole, I would say lucky for us, was hurt that summer and was not getting much attention. There was an instructor in Georgia that was a good buddy of mine, Scott Hamilton. He works with a ton of tour players, and he just kind of called me in maybe October or November of that fall and was like, "Hey, you might want to put an eye on this kid." I had talked to him on the phone a couple times, kind of during the summer, but I still hadn't seen him play yet. And anyway, so we get out to see him play. My assistant saw him play first at a Golf Week event at Vanderbilt Legends Club, actually, and loved him. And then we talked to him on the phone. Then I went and saw him play at a Golf Week event here in Lexington at Kearney Hill, and it was blowing about 25 miles an hour that day. You're going to be able to learn some things about a player when you go watch him play on a hard golf course on a hard day like that. And just he didn't have, I wouldn't say he had his best day, but you could just see the talent. He had speed, he had really good ball control. There were certainly some things that I thought he could do a lot better, and I told him those things after the tournament, and he went right to work on getting those things fixed. Wow. And it was pretty cool to see, just someone who's kind of open to coaching like that. I'm attracted to players that want to be coached, and he seemed to be that kind of player. And then obviously he had a great summer this summer. I mean, he's taken off, finished second at the Southern Junior, finished third at the Ping, and I personally think he's one of the best players in the country.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you see these players in their migration. I didn't realize he was hurt, but like I've been seeing his name at the top of the leaderboards in some very high level events. So, and I noticed his scoring average the last year is about 72.6, which is pretty darn impressive. 23rd in JGS. So if there was one word that you would use to describe Cole, what would it be?
Oh man, I would just say consistent. I think he's got like all the great players that I've been around. He just has a high level of focus on on just getting better. I just think he's not really letting anything else get in the way of that. I felt like Gordon Sargent had that, Will Gordon had that, Cole Sharp. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but Justin Thomas at Alabama, and just I think he has that same kind of motor. But he's just consistent.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of consistent, I think a top 10 machine, Charles Cawthon. Every time I see him, he's up, in the top 10, top 5 of leaderboard. He's from South Carolina. What can you tell us about Charles?
Charles, just a gritty competitor. Very secure in who he is, I would say. Watched him play for the first time at the Bobby Chapman, right around the same time I learned about Cole. I think it was like October of 23, and didn't have the best tournament or best week there, but just like there's something about him that just kind of fit me. He was gritty, he was tough, and he had really good ball control, and just kind of knew who he was. Wasn't trying to be anybody he wasn't, and just seemed pretty secure in who he was. And he actually came on a visit a couple of days later, I think after that golf tournament, and you could just tell kind of from the jump that hit him and his father. They're just a really good fit for our program. And I think he was probably top 30 or 40 in the country at the time for the class, which was an amazing get for us, and just kind of worked out perfect. And we can't wait to have him here.
Yeah, that's great. You got a one word to describe Charles?
Gritty.
Yeah, that's great. I do want to ask this because Charles won the AJGA Paris Island in 23, mm-hmm. and I noticed Cole won the same tournament this year. So is that part of the package deal? Like whoever wins it next year, is there a Kentucky commit? Like, do you have this pipeline deal going?
That's a good question. We weren't at that tournament either year, so maybe I need to go next year and see who's down there. So it seems to be a good one for us.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, let's move on to your third recruit, Cameron Phillips from Ohio. Like I mentioned, left-handed. Had 2 AJGAs this win. I think one of them in your backyard, kind of. And he had a very low scoring average, 71.7. I think played in the U.S. Junior. So when did Cam get on your radar?
Yeah, I went to a golf tournament during the U.S. Junior the summer I got the job, just trying to go somewhere different. And my assistant Chip actually went to the U.S. Junior, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go up to this little golf week event. And I was actually going up there to watch somebody else. And I watched one group for 18 holes that day, and Cam was in that group. And I had kind of heard Cam's name, but he was very, very impressive physically. A little bit immature, I would say, at the time. But I was like, man, I like the shot. He was just hitting golf shots. Ball made a different sound than than most kids his age. And I kind of followed him. So that was about almost a year before he committed. So I kind of watched him probably 3 or 4. Like, I feel like with Cole and Charles, it was like an immediate yes. That's like I love that. That works for me. But with Cam, I kind of need to see a little bit more. I need to see. He never really played anything big. He kind of stayed on the Golf Week tour, but and then we watched him a little bit more this summer, and he obviously took off this summer, and we were lucky to get him. To be honest with you, I mean, he just I think for me, I need to see him mature a little bit. I need to see him play better in some big time tournaments, and like you said, he won 2 AJGAs this past summer, and then played in the U.S. Junior. Didn't have his best week at the U.S. Junior, but you still see like, okay, this kid's got it, and couldn't be more thrilled to be signing him. I think his ceiling is super high, and he actually grew up a Kentucky fan, so he kind of fits the mold here. I feel like most of the kind of kids we get are kind of regionally, and he's a huge Kentucky fan, which is important to me.
Yeah. So what's one word you would use to describe Cameron?
Fearless.
Oh wow, cool. And I think I wanted to elaborate a little bit because hopefully listeners are picking up on this. You were specifically going to a tournament to watch some other player.
Correct.
And, by chance or by draw or whatever, he stood out. I think it's an important thing for juniors that are listening to this podcast. So, like, there's an opportunity to show out when you have a coach in front of you. Like, take advantage of that opportunity regardless of who it is. So it sounds like he opened some doors for himself, just the way he carried himself and the way he played.
Absolutely, and I think too, like he was a I would say all of our guys are a little bit later, commits. Charles maybe not as much. He committed in October, but Cole was like a January commit, and then Cam committed in like July or August. So like just like hang in there. If things aren't going your way on the recruiting side, like hang in there, and good golf's going to take care of itself.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think as a second year coach, you're trying to build a program. Having these three guys that kind of fit exactly what you're looking for, that has to be really, really important, right?
It is, man. It's just nice, kind of like I had two guys come in this past fall that were guys that I recruited and my assistant as well, and it's just it's just a different kind of ownership on your team, and you have guys that you recruited. I feel like you've kind of developed a good relationship with them over the last year or two or whatever it is, and they just kind of understand you. They understand what to expect. And it just makes the transition way easier.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Coach Todd, all the best this spring. All the best. And we'll be watching these guys and rooting for them, next summer, heading into the fall. And yeah, we're looking forward to big things coming out of Lexington.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Appreciate you, man.
All right, thanks.
Nick Clenard, Auburn University. Welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. Not welcome to. Welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me in War Eagle.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, you're in a little bit of a slow season now. The season's over. But we just had some exciting things happen last week where Auburn added three studs from the 2025 class. So, you got three kids in the top 31 in junior golf scoreboard, with a top 5 player. So I thought it would be a good idea to celebrate these guys and to kind of go over how does this happen? Auburn University is obviously, a top program, and kids I'm sure are very interested as to like, how does this happen? And so I just wanted to kind of go through these guys. And so we can start with, Jack Roberts, pretty close to you guys in Georgia, coming in as the 31st ranked player in the 2025 class. I was listening to your Instagram post. Apparently he has a ton of speed. So yeah, tell me a little bit about this guy. When did you first see him? And, ultimately, when did you, decide that you wanted him on your roster?
Jack's a young guy that we basically learned about him just with Southern Junior. Went out there as a young fellow. I think he was like 12, and he won that, and then kind of just worked up through the game. And he's had his ebbs and flows in this game, and I think I really think he's on the right track right now. He's working with Jan Reeves over in Sea Island, and Jan's done a wonderful job with the golf swing, and he's crazy athletic, Andrew, and he's he can jump, he can move, he's fast. He's probably about a 180 ball speed, kind of cruising.
Wow.
Which is super fast. And he's just learning kind of harnessing that power, as well. So we obviously we're very, very high on him. We just think the world of him, not only as a golfer, but as a person. And we think he's going to come in here and he's really going to take off and develop, and he'll be a different player in a year from now than he is right now.
When you talk about that he's a really, really good athlete, is that something that you definitely look at when you're recruiting someone, that they're very well-rounded athletically?
We'd like to. It's not a perfect science, but we'd like to get a guy that's very athletic and has some skill. When you get him in the gym, it's pretty easy to tell like who's athletic and who's maybe not, and who needs to have a little bit more development when it comes to some of those things, which I do think you can develop. But Jack's just a guy that just jumps off the charts at you from an athleticism standpoint.
That's pretty cool. He won Southern Junior that
he was young.
Wow, that's crazy.
And he's had his ups and downs, just like a lot of players have. And but I really think his best golf is yet to come, and he has a great support system back home, and we're just obviously extremely excited about him moving forward.
Yeah, well, let's move on to your two Virginia guys. So it's kind of interesting that both of them are from the state of Virginia. So let's talk a little bit about Jake Albert. Obviously, he, everyone knows who this cat is. Number 13 ranked player in the class. Big AJGA win this year. Yeah, tell me a little bit about how Jake came on the radar.
Jake's just a big, tall guy. He's another guy that's pretty athletic. The guy we identified at a young age is somebody that we wanted to evaluate and watch, and then it turned into recruiting him. And he's a very introverted type kid. He's quiet. At least he's around us. He's very quiet. He's got a great work ethic. Comes from a small town. Obviously a college town in Blacksburg, and I think that's kind of what drew him to Auburn was that college town feel. And something that he wanted to be a part of. But once again, he's another kid that's just a great support system back home, and he's a kid that has a lot of passion for the game. And I think he's a good ball striker. He's a good driver of the golf ball. And I think once he kind of develops his short game and his putting and probably learns how to practice a little bit better in some of those areas, I think he's really going to take off.
Yeah, it sounds like he has a super high ceiling. You know, those kids that are elite ball strikers, I mean, that's the hardest thing to change once they get to school. I mean, once you start getting them on around your facility with, you know, teaching them how to add loft, and then them, I think also too, like a lot of these kids, they just don't recognize the need for it. I think we talked about that in our podcast.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so I'm sure that he'll quickly develop those skills. Now your top recruit, Logan Riley, also from Virginia. I mean, Junior President's Cup this year. You know, the thing that I was looking at that was very rare is his level of consistency. He was in the top 18 out of every event but one this year, which just kind of screamed that this
Wow.
guy.
I didn't even know that.
Hey, there you go. So he, 7 of his 8 events, he's in the top 18. So yeah, speak to him a little bit. Obviously, you know, he was probably a high recruit for a lot of guys.
Yeah, he's another tall, athletic kid. Golf IQ's high. Like, he just understands the game. He understands placing the ball in certain spots. And he's still kind of raw, Andrew, and he's got a ways to go and to learn. And his best golf is yet to come, but he's already had so much accomplishments. He's number 1 in AJGA rankings in his class, and I think he's like 3rd in the country and junior golf scoreboard for whatever all that means. But I think his golf IQ is high because being around his dad's an agent for Wasserman, and being around a lot of pros, and you know, playing with some of those guys when he was a young age, and developing his game. And he's a good athlete. You know, his brother plays D1 basketball.
Oh, wow.
At the University of Delaware. So I think they kind of argue about who's the better athlete. But I think Logan probably could have played D2 or D3 college basketball. He's that athletic.
It sounds like these kids need to be good athletes. At least for
some of them are.
I mean, that's pretty much what you said about all of them. I mean, all 3 of them are showing up, you know, not only good at golf, but just being an athlete. And I think in junior golf, I mean, it's so easy to early specialize, which, I mean, there's pros and cons, but in general, creating someone who hits it far and who can do a lot of things is key. Well, you know, we're really looking forward to watching these guys this summer, and then heading into the fall of 25 to support your team. So good luck in the spring with the team. I'm sure you guys will be loaded and ready to go. And thank you so much for taking time to talk about these guys.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Coach Scott Limbaugh, welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast. It's great having you on.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. I'm excited.
Yeah, Scott is the head coach at Vanderbilt University. And if anybody tracks the class of 2025 closely, there's maybe 3 different websites that track it closely. Golf Channel had done an article, Golf Week had done an article, and there's this website, College Golf Commits. And all 3 of them had Vanderbilt as having the number 1 ranked class in 2025. So I'm really excited to have you on, but you must be really excited to have these 3 guys coming next fall.
Absolutely. We are thrilled, and certainly a lot of teams out there with a lot of great classes, and we're excited about ours, finding 3 guys that we think fit what we want Vanderbilt golf to be about, and the way they represent us and the way they handle themselves.
Yeah, that's great. So just at a high level, we've got John Ed Steed from Alabama, we've got Will Hartman from North Carolina, and we've got Michael Reeby all the way from California. It's probably been a while since you had a California guy on the team, right?
This is our second one since I've been here. So in my first couple of years here, we had a young man named Michael Decker from California. So good guy.
Okay, awesome. Well, I gave you a couple prompts. I just want folks to get an understanding of what you saw in these guys, when they became on your radar, and kind of what makes them tick and what makes them special. Why don't we start with John Ed Steed? So he's 16th ranked in the class. He won the Bubba Conley 2 years in a row, I believe, was second in the Team TaylorMade earlier this year, 72.6 scoring average. When did John show up on your radar?
Yeah, I think John Ed's just always been a guy. Obviously, with me being from the state of Alabama, I'm always paying close attention to the state of Alabama. And, you know, we've had a couple of really great players from the state. And I just think a lot of that has to do with I know people there that and that can vouch for who they are. And so John Ed Steed just been a guy that I've known about for a while, and then finally getting the opportunity to have conversations I just always remember thinking the sky is the limit for him. I really do think he's got unlimited potential. He's shown that he can be a winner. And, and a lot of this recruiting is about relationships and had strong relationships with some people that knew his family well.
That's great. That's great. So what do you think is like the one defining trait, if you could describe John Ed in one word?
Well, tough. I think he fits our Vanderbilt Golf DNA. I think he's a tough young guy.
That's great. That's awesome. All right, the next two guys, you've got two guys that are on the 8-man U.S. National Development Program, which started last year by the USGA. So you sort of have a bit of a monopoly on that program. But the first guy, Will Hartman, if folks may have seen him on TV at last year's U.S. Junior, he made a deep run into the semifinals. If anybody recalls last year's U.S. Junior, like Tommy Morrison was the number 1 seed. He was the college player playing against juniors. Everyone was sort of like ready for him to just blitz through, the bracket until he faced Will Hartman in the quarterfinals. So I think that maybe speaks a little bit to Will's, probably fearlessness and just being able to step up in the moment. I've come across Will a couple of times, a great kid. He was on the Junior Ryder Cup team last year, the Junior President's Cup team this past fall. He's got a ton of like big game experience. But when did Will make it on your radar?
I think truth is he's been at the top. He was the top of our list in that class for a long time. You try to develop a class around certain guys and the guys that have shown genuine interest. I think that's always one thing I talk about. And Will was always consistent in his like for and belief in Vanderbilt golf. And so I can't remember a time that Will wasn't on our radar, to be honest with you. He's just, he fits everything we're looking for in a Vanderbilt golfer.
And what's one word you would use to describe Will?
He's a flusher.
Flusher.
He swings it great. And by that, I just mean he is a ball striker and he loves team golf. And I love that about him.
Yeah, I would say, so I was at the Terracotta Invitational this past spring, and Will was paired up with my son in the final group. And Will didn't have his best day that last day, but you wouldn't have known it in terms of how he carried himself and how he dealt with the other players, in the threesome that day. And you see a lot of guys, maybe they're playing bad, and then they tend to sort of drag down the mojo and the rest of the group. So when you say Will's a huge team guy, I could totally see that. Like I just see him really supporting other kids and wanting to see them do really well.
Yeah, he's a pretty humble guy too. He at a young age, he reminded me a lot, just the way they look, a little bit, a lot of a young Gordon. And it just so happens he'll be Gordon Sargent. He'll be coming in a class as Gordon leaves, and not trying to put those kind of expectations on him, just saying we held him in very high regard.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So the third guy, Michael Reeby, he's second on Junior Golf scoreboard in the class. I looked at it as a 70.7 scoring average, which I think has to be one of the lowest in junior golf. Also on the Junior President's Cup team. It seems like every tournament he plays in, he's top 5 or he's in contention. So when did Michael get on your radar?
All these recruitings work a little different. Michael was really late. Somebody we had, my former assistant coach Gator Todd and I had a few talks with his swing instructor and had maybe seen him play some, but right when the recruiting window opened up, the summer before, Michael showed interest in us, and it kind of happened pretty fast. Just he made it clear that he wanted to come to the Southeast and kind of play in the SEC. And man, that first conversation I had with him, I was just blown away by the maturity and the way he talked about his game and his work ethic.
Oh, that's great. So what's one word you use to describe Michael?
Well, you hit on it a little bit with what you were saying about him, but I think just Mr. Consistent. He just seems like he shows up and plays at a really high level time and time again. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. He also is a great putter, and that's exciting for us.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So you mentioned one thing is I want to explore this a little bit. So you mentioned that the recruiting flavor is a little bit different for each kid. But in terms of like what you're going after and the program that you're trying to build and the culture you're trying to build, I think it has to be pretty consistent. Like this class of 2025, they've got a lot on their shoulders, right? You've got really two of the most celebrated players in your program's history. One who's been really the face of college golf the last 3 or 4 years, Gordon Sargent, graduating. In terms of like building this program and keeping the momentum going forward, how important is this class? And what's the role in terms of what you look for in recruiting kids?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, but for us, you're losing. When I think this is the best recruiting class we've had by rankings and things since Gordon Sargent, Jackson Van Paris, and so they are class of 2021, and so as the shift happens, we were just looking. We needed guys that could make an immediate impact, no doubt about it. So you got to be able to play golf. We're not going to shy away from that. We want guys that know how to get their ball in the hole sooner than others. But you also, we've never operated off this huge line of we're going to recruit, we're going to send mailers out to 45 people and hope. That's never been my philosophy. I'm a very relational guy. And so we've always worked at building the relationships, not just with the kids, but with the families, because there has to be a mutual trust, mutual desire to want everything that we want to be about. And we want to compete for championships, but we want to do it with class and integrity on and off the golf course. And a lot of that, everybody just has to line up on that. And everybody's not going to sound the same, look the same, or be from the same area. I'm from Alabama, and we got guys coming in from North Carolina to California. But I think that's what has helped our growth here. And I think it's just a little bit of, being a little different, being around others that might not see everything exactly like you. And it really helps to college is about growing, and all of that adds to that internal growth.
Yeah, one last thing, because it's been going around social media. The golf house must help, right?
Well, I'm giving more golf house tours. I'm gonna have to hire I need somebody to help me give golf house tours. But it is so much fun to have that kind of energy around our what we're fortunate enough to add. And yes, I heard I've got a 13-year-old nephew. Actually, he's 14 or 15. His mom texted me yesterday and just said something. Your YouTube video of your golf house is the hit amongst him and his. And I was like, what YouTube video are you talking about? And the one with Josh Mayer just came out. I guess I had no idea. And just that. And I heard from like several people that I'm like, there had to be their child or something telling them about that. Just YouTube. And so it turns out that's exactly what it was. But it's really exciting. And it certainly did help for these young guys to see, and their families to see the support and buy-in that our university and athletic director have with our golf programs.
Yeah, well, that's great. You must be doing something right, Coach, because by my count, I think Vanderbilt has produced the most All-Americans of any program the last 7 or 8 years. So you got something going on in Nashville. So I really appreciate your time, and just best of luck this spring, and really just rooting to watch these guys continue to develop and head right into Vanderbilt in fall of 2025.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
All right, thanks, Coach. All right, I'm here with Coach Brockbank from BYU. Welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
It's awesome having you, man. You've got a couple studs that really wanted to talk about, a couple homegrown talents. You've got Jackson Shelley from Salt Lake City, and you got Kihei Akina from Alpine. Both guys from Utah. Both guys very highly ranked. I actually looked in last year's U.S. Junior. There were only 16 players where it was their third U.S. Junior that they had qualified in and played in, and 2 of them are the year 2 recruits. So that's a pretty high company that those boys are in, and pretty impressive. A lot of guys don't get to 3 USGA events, much less 3 U.S. Juniors. So that's fantastic.
For sure, and that's where we're excited for those boys because they have been able to play quite a national schedule, but 3 U.S. Juniors, that is, as you mentioned, Jim, that's definitely a feather in their cap.
Yeah, for sure. So one question I've been asking is like when these players sort of get on your radar, it might be a little bit unique in your instance because I think both of these players, their older siblings are either on the program or have gone through the program at BYU. That's probably more common at BYU than in other schools and other programs. Sort of these family ties and this steady pipeline of golf talent. It seems to be really growing in Utah. But like Jackson Shelley, he's 56th in his class. He won the AJGA in Utah this year. Like I said, 3-time U.S. Junior qualifier. I have him at a 70.9 scoring average, which is super impressive. So What is that like when you've got an older sibling on the team? You know, is the family like telling you about the younger sibling? Like when are you like sussing out that this kid has some real talent?
Well, they play a lot of junior golf in the state of Utah, and so you watch them from, you're always looking a year or two in front, trying to get talent, right? And so when these kids are in the same family, they're all in the tournaments, sometimes the younger age division, and you have a chance to watch them, and they stick out because, especially the ones that are really athletic, like Jackson is. And, he's kind of following the shoes of his brother, and just the whole family dynamic, the way they work with their kids, makes it easy for you to be interested in what their potential. And that's when you start recruiting them as soon as you can to get them to have an interest in BYU.
Yeah, and I would think in Jackson's case, like Tyson's had a huge amount of success on amateur level. I think he won the Pacific Coast Amateur. So I think seeing older brother have this success, and look, a younger brother, they want to do everything that their older brothers are doing, just like naturally, right? In a lot of ways, a lot of times, like the younger brother ends up, even exceeding what the older brother has done because the older brother sort of set that path.
Right.
Yeah. So, what's one word that you would use to describe Jackson?
I would say, just very athletic. He's a basketball player. All the Shelleys are very athletic, and but Jackson is he can and athletic, strong, and sky's the limit for that kid.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking about, I think, star in the making, Kihei Akina, folks are probably aware, he made the cut in the Korn Ferry event. He played in the PGA Tour event recently in Utah, his first event, and nearly made the cut there as well. I saw him play at the Terracotta Invitational earlier this year, and he shot a 62 in the second round, which was a course record. I think he went like 77, 62. So like anybody who can shoot a 62 in my eyes is that can go super low. And I've seen Kia have a ton of success. Made match play in the U.S. Junior the last couple of years, and he's, I think, fourth or has been as high as first in his class in the ranking. So I know in his case, he's a guy who was being widely recruited. I mean, you were competing against the best of the best. So like Kia must have been someone who was on your radar early on.
For sure. We've been, since he was just a young guy, he just did things so naturally, right? He's very polished and just a great mind, very competitive. And so you could see that even at a young age. And, those low numbers that you talked about, that 62, he's been doing that for quite a while. And so it was easy to, he's been on the radar for many years, and you didn't have to wonder whether he was going to be able to make the step. He seems to be a step ahead, or maybe two sometimes in front of the others. And he's kind of in that, the best players that have ever come out of Utah. He's definitely in that category.
Wow, that's great, because we were talking before we jumped on here about just the competitive landscape in Utah just seems to be growing and growing and getting higher and higher and more elite. And like you said, Kihei is really showing out there. I did want to talk about maybe just the recruiting process for Kihei, because like I said, you're competing against these top programs. And I think he signed or committed rather late, I think, relative to others in his class. So was that a pretty stressful, competitive? Like, what did you think BYU ultimately offered that led to that decision?
Well, I think, to get in the game with a guy like that, one of the top kids in the country, that doesn't happen too often for us. But to have a guy local, I got to give credit to Coach Miller, because he hung in there even when it looked a little bit grim, and just stayed on this kid. And I think eventually, when it came right down to it, when he had to make a decision that, Cougar Nation, the support that you have all over the country, was a big part of him making the decision to come to BYU, and just getting to know some of the people that, are football players, basketball players of the past, definitely, warmed him up a little bit to the idea of staying home and being in the cold weather, because that was definitely a negative for him.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's one word you use to describe Kihei?
Man, so many words, but I'd just say polished and very mature, and just love the way he goes about his game, and not a lot of things phase him.
Well, those are fantastic traits, and he seems to have that extra gear that a lot of kids just don't exhibit, or they don't have, or they haven't developed yet. So, really excited to see him grow. I know he's a good kid. My son has played with him a couple times in the past, so really rooting for both him and Jackson to continue to develop, and day one, like step in and really help the program. So, Coach, I really appreciate the time, and just really appreciate the opportunity just to celebrate these kids and what they've achieved.
Well, thank you for having us, and again, wish you the best. As you continue to help the cause for collegiate athletics and these young kids.
All right, appreciate it, Coach. Take care.
Thank you.
Jim Anderson, the head coach of the men's team at the University of Arizona. Welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, so we got two future Wildcats that we wanted to talk about. You've got Finn McCall from California, and you've got an international player, William Wiestrand from Sweden. So I imagine they have vastly different sort of recruiting stories and how eventually they're going to make their way to Tucson next fall. So why don't we talk about Finn first? Like, when did he sort of get on your radar? What did you notice when you got to see him play?
Well, Finn comes from an area of the country that we've recruited quite heavily and had success finding guys from, Northern California, just inland California, not so much the Bay, but he comes from Clovis, California, just outside of Fresno. Mm-hmm. And he was on our radar early just because I knew of his ability as a golfer. I had a few friends in the area say to keep an eye on, this young man, because he kind of started golf a little bit later. He was more into baseball up until COVID. Like we're seeing athletes that are emerging now in the sport of golf. And but he really just, continued competing in a very talented area of the country. They play a lot of different types of golf courses, continued finding his way, closer and closer to the top. So he naturally was a guy that we targeted very early and, built up a relationship with, watched him play, was impressed, and great young man, comes from an awesome family. He's a very hard worker and very athletic. So we were just thrilled to get a chance to recruit and ultimately sign Finn and soon coach him.
Oh, that's really cool. And I have seen like the progression. Like he's got a number of top fives in AJGA events. So, and his scoring average is 71.8 over the last year, which is obviously pretty fantastic. So if there's one word that you would use to describe Finn, what would it be?
I would call him competitive. He's he's an athlete. He plays a bunch of different sports. As I know it, him and his buddies do a lot of other things too. They like to shoot hoops. They like to play. There's this new baseball game where the ball curves, like a ton. I don't actually know the game, but I would like to play it myself. But he's very competitive and he loves to compete. I know he likes to win too, but he just loves being in the arena.
So I'll ask you this before we move on to William. So when you're generally looking at recruits, are you looking for athleticism, kids that have played different sports in their background?
I don't know if it's a prerequisite, but it certainly comes as a welcome piece of information when we do find kids that have that type of background. When you're joining a college team, depending on where you're from and what high school golf looks like, it's the first time where you're around really good players, and you have to sometimes, maybe take, not have everything go exactly how you want it to go. You have to know what it's like to be a part of a team, make those types of sacrifices. And I know that Finn, just knowing him, the person, and him having the experience playing other sports, he's going to fit in great. He's going to probably know how to follow at the beginning, but he's going to develop into a leader very quickly because of his athleticism and playing other sports and all the things he learns from those experiences.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's move on to William, coming away from Sweden. So I imagine this recruiting, actually, this is the first international player we've come across in this series. So what does recruiting a player from Sweden look like? Like, how does somebody like that get on your radar? And, I imagine you had a chance to see him play. Like, what stuck out during that process?
Well, he's another very, very talented ball striker and player, and he's put together just a very impressive resume too. little fact about William, I've been over to Europe a number of times to watch various different events. The first time I remember seeing him play, he was playing with members of his team on the Swedish national team. And of course, you're trying to gain information, talk with the coaches, build up a relationship with the coaches from each of the countries when you're over there. And he was fast tracking to professional golf. He was looking at pro golf, and at the time, I don't think college golf was really on his radar. And not until I realized he had decided that college golf was something that he wanted to do. And actually, there was a coaching change at a previous school, which opened the door to his recruitment being an opportunity again. And that's when we got on the phone and built up a relationship, got to know each other. And really timing was a very, very fortunate thing for both of us, because we were in need of a great player, and he was looking for a program that could fulfill the needs and opportunities that he was looking for to continue advancing as an elite player himself. So it was an interesting recruiting process, but one that I think both of us are very, very happy about.
Yeah, and I imagine like the relationships that you have overseas, those are developed over time, right? I mean, you've had players come from overseas as well, but like hearing, like you said, like hearing about these players and having trusted individuals who like, hey, this kid's got something or whatever, like that gives you probably a leg up on getting in these kids earlier than other schools.
I think so, and I think the other way you build trust is through time and experience, and having other European players have been a part of our program go on and have success and have good experience. They can vouch for the things that we do with our players and the things that we provide our team as far as access and competition and facilities and all the things that we have. That type of feedback gets spread throughout, and then we're in a position where we can open doors with some very elite, very good players, and we want to do that everywhere, not just in Europe, but Asia, the United States, Arizona, everywhere. We're looking for the best players.
So what's one word you'd use to describe William?
I would say he's very calculated. He's very
nice.
He knows a lot. He's very specific, and calculated would be what I would say. So maybe our new recruiting class is the CNC, competitive and calculated. But you nailed it at the beginning too, Jim. It's really fun as a coach to get to bring players from all over the country and sometimes all over the world together. They share a room in their freshman year. They don't know they're going to be good friends. I don't know if Finn and William are going to grow to be best friends, but a lot of times it ends up shaking out. They become very good friends. And if I do a good job, I get invited to a couple of weddings, down 8, 10, 12 years down the road.
That's funny. So I did want to mention a couple of things. You mentioned facilities. I believe you guys opened what I've seen, like a beautiful new facility for the men's and women's program. Like, how much of a difference maker has that been so far, and do you see it being in the future?
Yeah, we've been so fortunate with the William M. Bell Clements Golf Center to have opened in April, and our teams are using it right now as we speak. They just, they've got a home, they've got a place where we can share camaraderie, build culture, practice, get better, go play, and it's been something that really has been a dream for so many people for so long. So to have it really come to fruition has been awesome. And you nailed it with recruiting. It's something that we're just extremely excited to share with the kids that we do bring in on visits. They leave very impressed, I think, and overall, it's been something that has been so well received by all parties that we're hoping to continue to build and continue to do some great things into the future.
Yeah, well, that's cool. You mentioned the current team. I noticed you guys are ranked 11th in the Clip rankings. You guys had some really strong performances. Some really good players. Tiger Christensen comes to mind. But you guys got to go to St. Andrews this fall. Like, how was that experience?
Yeah, that was honestly something that you can't even draw up. And I'm so glad and thankful to have college golf a part of my life, not just as a collegiate, 20 years ago, now having been a part of the coaching tree and, the people who hopefully help provide these types of experiences. But you can't even dream up what that was like for both teams, men's and women's. And there were 3 schools from the U.S. that got to enjoy it together. And it was about the competition when the ball went in, the tee went in the ground, and it was like on the tee from the University of Arizona. Yes, we wanted to play our best, and yes, we wanted to win, but coming back, and we played well. Zach Polo won individually, and we had some great play all fall, like you mentioned, Jim. But really, what we what we gained from that tournament, you can't even put it down on paper or a ranking or anything. It was just an experience that we will all share and remember forever.
Somebody had told me that it's like every 4 years you can go back, or I don't know if there's a NCAA rule, but you're going to put yourself on the short list for 2028, I guess.
If there's a way to put yourself on the list there, we would love to sign up for it. So I would highly encourage any team with that opportunity. The St. Andrews Lynx, the St. Andrews Trust did an unbelievable job. A number of other people made it possible, but it was the most memorable trip that we've ever taken.
Oh, that's really cool. So, Coach, I really appreciate your time. We'll be rooting for you this spring and really expecting big things, not only for your current team, but these future recruits coming on board.
Thank you so much, Jim. Yeah, great podcast. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, man. We'll see you.
Bye.
Coach Alcorn, TCU Men's Golf. Welcome back to the pod. How are you going, man?
Man, fantastic. You doing all right?
Everything is good. Well, we have been running through some programs, some coaches, just talking about these 2025 recruits, because I think, as I did in another one of these, I think a lot of players are just interested in, from this side of the table, your side of the table, like, how does this all come about? How do you ultimately decide these guys? And also just to celebrate these guys. Like, this is a big deal. We played junior golf, for years, and this is, one of the most exciting times for these guys. So just wanted to go over the 3 that you signed. You've got 3 guys in the 25 class. And let's start with the guy that's from out of state, from Minnesota, Sam Udovich. Tell me a little bit about Sam, kind of how you got to know him.
Well, it's funny how it all kind of worked out, but just talking all 3 real quick, they've been playing tournament golf together since they were 6 years old, like through the U.S. Kids stuff. And so it's funny how it just came full circle for those 3. And, to play golf together at the same college is not a dream for them, but just kind of something that they always had talked about. Hey, if this happens, that's awesome. And sure enough, it did. So it's just funny how it works sometimes where you get players that have known each other for decades and families that have already kind of built bonds. And so that's what we had there in the 25 class, which was pretty special. So, but Sam Udovich was a player that came on my radar even when I was at my previous school at Oklahoma, and saw him out at Junior Worlds in San Diego. Remember seeing him here or seeing him there. Remember seeing he came to camps that we had, and so just got to be around him and liked his personality. His family's great, and you could see he was going to be a tall, lanky kid with potential to have a lot of speed, and sure enough, that speed has really, really developed, and he's turned into a really, really good player and had a nice summer.
Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. I think he's pumping like low 120s in his simulator.
Yeah, he'll hit 180 and low 180 ball speeds too. So it's that's kind of the norm now, but it's impressive when you see that out of a 17-year-old.
Yeah, and looking at his ranking, he just came off a big win up in Montana at an AJGA. So, he probably doesn't get to play as much as your next 2 guys down here in Texas, but he seems like he is definitely going to be an elite player in college. So jump into those guys from Texas. I mean, obviously, I've known about these 2 guys for a long time. One, because, I just pay attention to junior golf, but, now Cameron, my son's playing against them in some events. So let's talk a little bit about Mr. Hofferkamp down there in Austin. Down there in the Woodlands, Austin Hofferkamp.
Yeah, I mean, Austin has played a ton of tournaments. He just continues to play, a ton year after year. He's got they have been in the Woodlands. They also split time up in kind of the Midwest. So, you'll see him play a lot of tournaments in the Midwest in the summertime. But what I really like about Austin is that he's always been a golfer, and it's always just been something innate in him. You can tell when you watch him play. He just looks extremely comfortable when he's playing. Again, another big body that has potential to just hammer it. And I'm excited for where his growth is, because when his game is really clicking, it looks really, really good, and it looks big time, because he is able to hit shots with his frame that just look different than other guys. I think he's become a really, really good putter. That was something I think if you looked a couple of years ago, he would say was probably his weak point, but the more that I evaluated him and kept watching him, I feel like that's something he really got really improved on over the last, let's call it 18 months or so.
With me, with regard to Austin, like I don't know if I've ever met him, but he's someone that it seems like even this year, I mean, he's right there finishing first or second multiple times a year. So he seems to have a level of consistency throughout his junior golf career of just when he does play well. I mean, he's right there at the top of the leaderboards, which down here in North Texas and playing other places, he seems to show up a lot on the leaderboards.
The one thing about exactly, and we love that about him. It's funny. The other thing that I would say I've never had a recruit that is more loved and talked about by other recruits than Austin Hofferkamp. And it's when we got him on campus, it was just kind of an immediate fit of like, man, this is going to work. If you want to be here, I think it's going to work really well. And yeah, he's kind of a guy that a lot of younger players know who he is and have played a lot with him and are very comfortable with him. And he's just the friendliest guy, but willing to be very competitive and get after it too.
Yeah, he'll definitely be a huge addition to the team. And, so your top recruit, at least from a ranking standpoint, is Nate Miller. And I mean, I've known about Nate. I mean, I think I saw Nate when he was probably 8 years old, and the kid had a ton of skill. Very, very unique at that time, but very, very skilled. So yeah, talk about kind of when you first heard about Nate and ultimately how you made the decision to recruit him.
Yeah, Nate was a guy that we had just seen on leaderboards for a while. I again, similar to Sam, I feel like the first time I saw him really play was in the young age group out at La Costa, I believe it was, for the Junior Worlds. And so saw him there and was again, someone that you could see, okay, he's got potential to be really good. And we just continued to evaluate him I guess he popped maybe his junior year. He finished, I can't remember if it was second or third at either the Ping or the junior players. I'd have to go back and I get them confused a little bit, but had a couple great finishes and some invitationals, and he has a very, very strong high school resume too. He's done some really good things in high school, and again, he's my class is. They're 6'5-ish, 6'4-ish, 6'3". I mean, they're really big kids, and Nate falls right into that and just has some long levers and can really hammer on it too. I feel like he's done a really good job lately working on wedge game and wedge numbers and getting that a little bit more consistent from a scoring standpoint. But he's a guy that's very, very capable of going and shooting, 6 or 7 under par, and you just don't see that too often in junior golf. Guys getting it under par and then continuing to push it under par.
Yeah, the other thing about Nate is that, not every junior gets the competitive experience that he has. I mean, he's been playing in the AJG Invitational, some of the Elite AM stuff, Western Junior type thing. So I think he's going to be very prepared to take the jump to college golf, which you don't always see that. So that's got to be exciting.
Yeah, it is. And that's, I think, moving forward with college golf, you really, really need that as freshmen coming in with the size of the rosters of just guys prepared to play right away and be immediate players for you. You can't really rely on guys to redshirt just because you just don't have the numbers to do that. And so these 3 guys, I feel like they're going to come in and be very competitive. And moving forward, that's kind of what I think the top programs would be looking for, is guys that can come in and make an impact their freshman year.
Yeah, well, you've got 3 studs. I'm excited to see how your spring season goes, and then ultimately when these guys show up next fall, that will be great to watch them. We'll be watching them this summer, and just so congrats on that. Congrats to those guys, and thanks for your time and for your thoughts.
You got it, Andrew. Take care.
Coach Ryan Hybl, it's an honor to have you on the Driven Golf Podcast. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So Ryan, Coach Hybl is the head coach, the men's team at the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner. And you guys are having a fantastic fall. Arguably one of the number 1 or number 2 team in the country. 3 wins this fall, and it looks like you're just continue to just keep reloading. You got 3 signees for the class of 2025. I know you must be super excited about that. So. We're gonna take an opportunity just to celebrate these kids and their amazing achievement and learn a little bit about what makes them tick and also what you saw in each one of them. So you've got Eli Walker Campbell from Texas, you got Preston Albee from Oklahoma, and you got Adam Anderson from California. So I think each one of them is kind of a little bit of a different twist, right? Because like Eli Walker Campbell, his family has deep ties to OU Nation. So his older brother is currently on the team, Stephen Campbell Jr. Like, do you remember the first time that you saw Eli Walker Campbell? Like, he had been pretty small, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, Eli came on his brother's visits way back when. It's so much fun to be able to recruit guys, obviously, that want to come to our place. But when you have the passion, the driven passion for our place, like what Eli Walker Campbell has, their family, their mom, Alyssa, she played on our women's basketball team. They just a long history of, Sooners within their family. And it's really, really awesome to have that type of love and passion because you can feel it as a coach. We have to go through our process and make sure that we're getting talented guys and with the right work ethic and whatnot. But when you see a guy like that, I knew that he wanted to come here right from the get go. Once he decided that he wanted to be a high level competitive golfer and wants to go play professional golf like all these guys do, it just made sense. We were able to figure things out pretty quickly, and Eli Walker Campbell is we call him Ox. I mean, this guy is strong as an ox. He works out with his football team, pretty much every day. His work ethic is incredible, and he has a great warrior-like mentality when he's on the golf course. Sometimes, when you see him, you'll be like, man, Eli is hitting it all over the place, but he figures it out. He knows how to get the ball in the hole. He's a under the radar, nice putter. And, I think he gets a lot out of his game. So as he continues to develop, ball striking wise and just working his way around a golf course, he's going to be able to do, as the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, that's great. And also is probably seeing what it takes with his older brother to be a high level D1 college athlete. I think he might have caddied for him at the US Amateur at Cherry Hill. So like seeing that up front and close, so just knowing like where his game was at a couple years ago and where it needs to be, now and going into next year had been really instructive for him as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a younger brother. My older brother was 2 years older than me, and he was a really good golfer as well. And I just think that there's always a chip on your shoulder as a younger brother to prove yourself continually. I'm going to show you that I'm better than you. And I think Eli Walker is very much that. He's always wanted to make sure that he not only, it shows his big brother that he can play with him, but that he's going to be better than him. And I know Steve would tell you that Eli's more talented than the older brother, right? I mean, Eli's he might have a little bit more talent, and I got no problem saying that. Steven being a fifth-year senior, he's been with me a long time. Steve, very, very much the same way. Gets a lot out of his game. Just super warrior when it comes to the golf course. You want him in your foxhole when you're playing. Our game within a team because you just know he's given everything that he's got, and he passed that down to his younger brother. And it's just going to be really fun to have another Campbell on the squad.
Yeah, well, I see a lot of clips of your social media, your guys getting after it in the gym, so it seems like Eli will fit right in.
Oh yeah, no, he is all in. Like I said, he is strong as an ox. He's continuing to understand his golf swing better and better and better. And he always hit a little bit more of a harder draw. And we've been talking a lot just about the future and whatnot. And he decided that it was probably a better thing for him to start seeing the ball move left to right, and he's adopted that here in the last 2 months, and I'm starting to see some high level golf. He played well at the Bobby Chapman. He played well at the State Junior. He played well here recently. Where was the last one? Anyway, he's had a couple nice finishes, and I would credit a lot of that to him. Taking on the just a fundamental difference within his golf swing of understanding how to keep the ball a little bit better in play, going from a guy that's got speed, right to left type of worker with the golf ball. Now he's kind of moving it more a little bit left to right.
So what's one word you would use to describe Eli Walker?
Oh, he's a fighter. There's no doubt. What attracted us the most to him outside of just the legacy and the heart for our place, he's not afraid to walk in a 20-footer for par. Because he knows that he needs it. And when you have that type of mentality, that can take you a long ways, not just in our game, but certainly in life. And their parents have done an amazing job growing these two guys because they get the most out of who they are, what they are, in especially in their sport, but as people as well. I mean, these guys are leaders in the community, leaders on their team. So really a great addition for us.
All right, let's move on to Preston, another guy close to home. And I've got a lot of respect for Preston because he won the Red River Challenge at Dornick Hills, where I play some golf. So I have a ton of respect for any guy that can go low at Dornick Hills, because I can't seem to do it. But I imagine like Preston had probably gone through the junior ranks in Oklahoma, and probably somebody who got on your radar. Like, do you remember the first time you had a chance to see him play?
Well, the first time would have been at golf camp when he was probably 9 years old. So we've known Preston a long time, and just fell in love with who he was when he was a young little guy at golf camp. He came year after year. His parents did a great job allowing him to be a part of camp as a youngster, and he just kept playing in junior events. And I'm going to tell you, every guy has their own story. All these guys are significantly different every year. And I can't talk about how anybody else goes through the recruiting process. I can only talk about how I go through it. And I actually went and watched Preston play basketball a couple years ago. And he's a stud of an athlete. And watching him play ball was as more eye-opening for me than maybe even playing golf. He just understood what it took to win. I saw that. You can kind of see different attributes from a guy whenever they're doing another sport in particular. And last year he got into a high level like training program with a guy online. And this is kind of what I'm talking about when I'm equating it to basketball and to Preston and what I was able to see. Super high level athlete. Okay. Then all of a sudden he starts really working on the golf side of things. This guy went from being, I would say, just kind of a mediocre swing speed type swinger to now he's a legit bomber. And as we all know, hitting it hard is a big part of the game now, right? And Preston is still just figuring this thing out with golf, in my opinion, just like we all are. And very similar to Eli. I mean, I think he's got a high ceiling. He's a worker. He wants to come in here and prove himself. And so when I think back to my, outside of the golf camp days, I think about how athletic he was. I think about what I thought 2 years ago. This guy's got high potential that is going to only, continue to get better and better and better.
Yeah, that's great. So if you had one word to describe Preston, what would that be?
Athletic, for sure. Athletic. That's where I'm at with him. Athletic.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So Adam Anderson, a little bit further from home. I think you guys, you tend to dominate sort of this region that we're in, North Texas and Oklahoma, for sure. But like, how did Adam get on your radar?
Well, what's interesting, I think COVID changed things a little bit for us. I've seen more West Coast guys be interested in coming, a little bit more east. We got Clark Van Galen out of California as well. He's 2024. He's come in and has done an amazing job. And Adam Anderson kind of popped on our screen a little bit more, futuristically driven recruiting, unlike what we normally do, is a little bit more of the Instagram social media. We started following him. This guy had a super athletic move. And this is a big credit to Jonathan Moore, my associate head coach. Well, we started talking a little bit about Adam, and he started communicating more and more and more. And before you know it, Jay Moore said, he's like, hey, I think you need to talk to this guy. After we had some conversations, after he had a conversation with his dad, with Adam, and just he thought that it was going to fit what I like, which that's a credit to having great people around you, because you have to know what guys are gonna like, what they're gonna buy into in recruiting. we really have to understand who can we actually go get, right? Sure, we want the best players. There's no doubt about that. But for us, with Oklahoma and how I've, tried to, work our program over the years is trying to get the best fits possible. And I'm going to tell you, when Adam came in on his visit, this would have been a full year ago in the fall. I mean, he left and we all looked at each other and go, that's our guy. It was that simple. We had a lot of guys come in last fall. I remember being overwhelmed going, man, we've got so many guys coming in here, and we're just kind of in and out on certain things. And when he left, it was obvious to me, to us as a group, that it was like, this guy's going to fit our mold. He's a worker. He says the right things. Super talented guy. I would say 3 to 4 years ago, he was one of the best junior golfers in the state of California. And as you know, being in Texas, if you're one of the best in California, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. He went through a little bit of a dip, but we've been just seeing him come right out of it and confident. He bombs it, has a great work ethic, has a great system around him with his family. I mean, it's kind of hard to really speak about it, but just like a junior golfer might come on a visit and go, this is the place I want to go, the same thing has to happen with coaches too. It's a two-way street. And we just felt that it was right whenever he left our place. We're like, we got to go get this guy.
Yeah. So I wanted to explore this a little bit, because I think you could stack up OU's success over the past, 10, 12 years since you've been coaching or longer, making national championships, making match play, winning a national championship. And somehow every year you seem to have like the deepest, most talented teams. And like, how do you evaluate these recruiting classes to be able to just like have that sustained success?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. That's a huge compliment. But I don't know. I mean, it's great people. Our team is our best recruiters. Whenever guys come in on campus and if they can get around our squad and feel the vibes of what our program's about, and we just, every day we just try and come in and give everything we got, and that's what we try and do. And I'm going to say this out loud, Jim. There's been a lot of craziness in the last couple month when it comes to just college golf and junior golf, and there's just been a really rough time that everybody's kind of been experiencing. So I appreciate you shedding light on the guys that did sign, and the future is still going to be funky. I really believe that the next couple of years, but we're going to keep fighting through it. And our guys, that's one thing that I can promise you from any of our guys that we saddle up with is, if they give it their all, we're going to give it our all, right? And you just never know who's going to pop through in our sport. I've been doing this a long time. I was one of those guys that was one of the best junior golfers in the country, and this, that, and the other. But there's a lot of guys that when I was going through behind me that ended up being way better than I was. And so again, trying to figure out, I've tried to keep that mentality, with all of our recruiting. Of course, you want the best players that you can get, but you truly have to get the best fit. And sometimes we whiff. We're just like everybody else, and things don't work out, or whatever the case may be. But overall, we're just trying to get good kids that want to come in here and fight for everything that they can with the Fur Golf program. And that's what I really like about all three of these guys in this 25 classes. That's what I felt from all of them.
Yeah, that's great. All right, you've been great with your time. One last thing I wanted to ask you: how much of a game changer is this new practice facility? I think it's coming online here very shortly, right?
Yeah, we've been working on it for a while now. We've got a couple more months left. We're tired of the trailers. We've been in trailers. The boys are tired of the trailers. I actually felt this will give you a little insight into how important team dynamics, team golf is. We've always had a great facility, a team building, and last spring we didn't have it for the first time in my career. Because we're under construction and we're in trailers, and I could feel our togetherness wasn't quite the same. So I brought in another trailer this over the summertime and put a ping pong table in there and put all of our TVs and nutrition and stuff in that trailer, just so the guys would have a place to kind of hang out. And I've already seen a big difference this fall time and because that's the heartbeat of our program. And these new buildings are going to be fantastic. I mean, two new buildings. They're going to be special. I can't wait to show them off whenever we get that opportunity. But right now, I'm more honed in on us having our heartbeat back, and having home back. So our facility never got taken away. Our guys, they still have, 20, 25 acres worth of green space for them to be able to practice and work on every day. But that heartbeat, just take away your home for a little bit and you'll know what it kind of feels like. And these are these are not hard problems. It's just things that I noticed as a coach last spring that we went through that we kind of missed out on. So I can't wait for us to get back in there January, February, and can't wait to show it off whenever we get that chance.
Well, it's going to be scary for the rest of the college golf landscape if this heartbeat keeps pumping, because you guys are having tremendous success this fall, and just all the best this spring. And we're just really rooting for you and rooting for these new guys you got coming in. So I really appreciate the time, Coach.
Well, I appreciate it, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks, man. All right, I'm here with Coach John Rehorn from Oregon State. How's it going, John?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So we really wanted to talk about your 2025 signees and just celebrate, their golf achievements. I think you've got some really interesting folks you got coming on board. Some very, very highly rated kids. You went the international route, which I think was also very interesting. I'd like to just talk about what that exactly looks like on the recruiting trail. Mm-hmm. So you've actually got two kids that were on the international team of the Junior President's Cup that just happened just recently. You've got Win On Min, who's I think probably the top rated kid in the world in Wagger of the 2025 class. I think he's like 60th in the most recent rankings, like super impressive. And also Antoine Jasmine, who I think was the Canadian representative on the international Junior President's Cup team. So must be super excited to have these kids coming to Corvallis here in a little over, I guess, in less than a year. But yeah, these are seems like two great gets for you.
Yeah, really excited about both of them. I mean, obviously, Min, his record speaks for itself. He kind of became noticeable 2 years ago at the Asia Pacific when he finished, I think, 7th or 9th. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was, but that was like, a 15-year-old finishing in the top 10 of the Asia Pacific Amateur at, Royal Melbourne. Like that jumps off the page there, obviously. And obviously Antoine was a total late guy where we watched him in Las Vegas at the AJGA Senior Showcase, believe it or not. Like, wasn't really even being recruited, hadn't done a whole lot. I think he was 1,400 in junior golf scoreboard at the time we watched him.
Wow.
But I don't know. My assistant saw him and thought, man, he just compresses the ball really well, and he looked the part. And I think he's a guy that just junior golf courses don't fit him, if that makes sense. He's a big, strong, powerful guy, and he couldn't really use his strengths. We felt like, and I flew to Florida and watched him in the wintertime, and he didn't play great, but there were some things about him, the way he carried himself, the way he competed, some shots he hit that we felt like he was worth, hey, let's take a chance on a guy. And then he worked his butt off over the time from December till July this year, and all of a sudden he's on the Junior President's Cup team.
That's fantastic. And I think he got an AJGA win in Vermont or Killington. I'm not exactly sure where that's at, but talk about like some of these little things that stuck out to you when you saw him, because obviously you're trying to project what this kid's going to look like on the college scene in a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that stuck out was just this, the way he hit the ball. He, like, my assistant noticed when he first saw him in Las Vegas, like, he compressed the ball. Like, that's something that, it's going to translate to bigger golf courses. One of our best players that graduated last year, Mateo Fuenmayor, was similar in terms of when we recruited him. Big, strong, athletic kid, and could drive the ball and drove it really straight. But I just didn't feel like he got to really take advantage of that in junior golf. And then he got to college and it worked, So I think sometimes the junior golf courses are just too short sometimes for some guys, where they're not really able to take advantage of their strengths. But I think, like, when I can remember going to Florida and watching them, and it was at where they have the Honda, or what it used to be the Honda Classic, so a tough course. I liked the way he carried himself. I liked the way he competed. I thought he had good touch on the greens. I remember that standing out, that like for a guy that can hit it pretty decent, like he had good speed on the greens. Like that's always something that it's kind of underrated, I think. Somebody that can kind of just hit a 40-footer to tap in every time. He didn't play great, like I said, but he showed enough to like, hey, let's keep an eye on this guy. And then he came on a visit, and the guys on the team really liked him. We liked the way he interacted with the guys on the team. And I think then we kind of knew that he was somebody that we felt like would be a good fit for our program.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's what's one word you'd use to describe Antoine?
Competitor. I think that's like you don't go to what he's done. I think he set his mind on being really good when he had the chance. And I think, we should kind of maybe show that we believed in him when maybe some others didn't. And I think that was big for him. I think one of the things when I started thinking about it too, like last year when we kind of first noticed him was in the Canadian, like Team Canada hosts a qualifier every year for who can make Team Canada. And he finished second in that tournament, a 4-round tournament on a legit golf course. And again, it was like something that like popped off the page. It's like, well, this doesn't happen in junior golf, but like if you're showing up to like the Team Canada qualifier, trying to make the national team, and you're beating like legit players for 4 rounds, like that was something that stood off the page for me too, So that was something also to think about with Antoine.
It'd be very easy to see that translating, in some of these big college events that you're playing in.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's shift gears. Let's talk about men's, because I think you mentioned some of the accomplishments, which have been phenomenal. I mean, in the Junior President's Cup, he went 2-1, and he really played, I think, the best that the U.S. team had to offer. Like 4 of the best kids in the country, guys like really kind of household names like Blades Brown, Tyler Watts, Miles Russell, and competed it very, very well against them. I think beat Miles Russell in singles the last day. But also, I think you don't think of Vietnam as like a golf mecca or a golf powerhouse. Like he very likely could be the best kid that's ever come out of that country. My mom's from Vietnam, actually, so we're rooting for him to continue to do well. But what does that look like? Like a kid that maybe on your radar, obviously he's ranked very, very highly, but how do you start that conversation and get a kid to consider coming to the Pacific Northwest?
Just reached out to him via Instagram, honestly,
wow.
And then had a conversation with him, and we hit it off from the beginning. I could just tell from just the conversation I had with him. I can remember, I think I was at practice in our facility, and I was showing him around a little bit, via FaceTime or whatever, and we just like hit it off, and you could just tell he was a genuinely nice kid. It was easy to have a conversation with him, super engaging, asked tons of questions. And I think one of the things that stands out about Min is that like there's like a quiet confidence, belief in himself. I don't think everybody you talk to about Min says, oh, he's such a great kid, he's awesome, And like when I went to Japan for the Asia Pacific this year, because I had one of my guys playing and then Min was playing, so I went to see Min again in September or October, and everybody there loves Min. It's easy to tell that they all love him, but the guy he's also thinks he's good at golf, but he's not cocky about it. Like, I don't know if this is true or not. I can't remember who told me this, but somebody told me that he asked the captain of the international squad to play Miles Russell the last day.
Okay.
So, it's like it's interesting because it's interesting. Even in the U.S. Junior quarterfinals, he's like, Coach, I'm so sorry I let you down. I'm like, you made the quarterfinals. Like, how are you not letting me down? Like, I'm fired up for you. This is awesome. So yeah, there's like a quiet, humble confidence about Min that's really cool. And I think from a team standpoint, just like when you see him interact with everybody, like when I was in Japan last month and watched him interact with all of his friends and his buddies, you can tell like he's somebody that everybody just kind of wants to be around. So that's exciting from a team standpoint for our team.
Yeah, and I noticed on Wagger, there's also other juniors from Vietnam that have also kind of climbed up the rankings. And it seems like in a lot of ways, he maybe has sort of elevated the entire golf scene in that country just from a competitive standpoint, because he's like kind of raising the bar on everyone. And I know this Nomura Cup that he just won individually, and I think Vietnam won as a team, which he probably 2-3 years ago, you probably wouldn't have thought that was possible. So yeah, he could be a potential game changer.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think there's the idea that golf is in the Olympics is such a massive deal for those countries, right? They're pouring for them to win a to think that, Min could go in 10, 12 years and win a gold medal, maybe, or maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's 8 years from now. Like that is such a huge deal for a country like Vietnam, and the countries across the world are putting money into golf because of it. You can say the same thing. I mean, same thing with the USA now. The starting of a national team, like they can see what's been going on around the world and are wanting to try and provide the resources for the kids that need it.
Yeah, well, that's great. And look, we'll be really rooting for these kids. I have a special interest in men's development as well. And I think they're just going to continue to do great things once they get on campus. So I really appreciate the time, Coach.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
The Driven Golf Podcast is produced by Joseph K. If you like this episode, like it, subscribe, pass it on to a friend who might be interested. It really helps us out a lot. We'll be back in a couple weeks with the next episode. Until then, remember, in this great game, the journey is the gift. Enjoy the journey.